good afternoon. It's usually good evening, but it's good afternoon. Don't Unfriend Me Nation. My name is Matthew Spear. I'm the host of Don't Unfriend Me. It's good to have you here. And I say afternoon, you might be confused. Like, Matt, you're set. It's so dark. Blackout curtains. We've got 4 windows here, oversized windows that have always kind of thrown the show off, and it creates a lack of consistency. I know the set may look a little different. Olivia has joined the show full-time live, who is my lovely wife. So it's been a little bit of a crazy week. So to my podcast listeners, it's hard for you guys to stay in touch because you really just hit me up on Spotify or Apple or Stitcher, and you don't necessarily follow me on Facebook and Twitter, so you don't know what's going on. I always feel bad about that. I always feel like maybe I should send out a quick little podcast just saying, hey, sorry, it's going to be a crazy week, because I only posted like 1 or 2 videos last week. So I want to apologize. We'll get some consistency now, but we had to redo the set, add her a station, black out the windows, do all this. It looks like we have a chem lab in here. I'm sure the DEA is going to come over. I'm just kidding. Let's not let that happen. But to the podcast listeners who are always so patient and awesome, I appreciate you. And to the people who follow me on social, you knew what was happening. Well, what are we talking about? Now that we can get into it. Well, we're going to talk about the debt ceiling and the 14th Amendment and how the Democrats really use this as a crutch, something that they always latch onto. They always focus on this and use it for legislation. We know they've done this with the 14th Amendment because it is kind of a get out of jail free card for the Democrats, at least in their interpretation of the amendment and the laws within. And really, we've seen failures attached to this throughout Democratic policy and history. One is when it comes to Roe v. Wade. Roe v. Wade stood for decades, and it went on the privacy laws and saying that murder really is about privacy, which is ridiculous because murder is illegal and abortion was kicked back to the states, and the Supreme Court went against Joe Biden. This isn't the first time. He's now 0 for 7 when it comes to decisions by the Supreme Court. We will see that with his debt forgiveness. We saw it with Obamacare mandates, that they were unconstitutional, and they will use the 14th Amendment for that. If you look at the impeachment of Donald Trump, there were signs and indications that he would still be able to run in 2024, which he's doing right now. Even though they have a litany of cases against him, they're trying to use in Article 3 the whole point of if you are seditious or create rebellion or insurrection against the government, you can't run, which is why they're trying to make January 6th stick to him, even though it's not necessarily working. The 14th Amendment is the get out of jail free card for liberals. It's what they always do, is use it and go ahead and try to make it about some sort of secret policy that will get them a carte blanche pass without having to actually do the work and real legislation. The interesting thing is now it's rearing its ugly head again, and they've been talking about this with the debt ceiling, that Joe Biden should just use an executive order through the 14th Amendment, which of course the SCOTUS would shoot down, but for them to hear that on an emergency basis would not take place. So within a year or so, they would hear the case and realize that this is unconstitutional and then kick it down the road. And if that's what Democrats want to do, that's fine. But ultimately, all they're doing is shooting themselves in the foot. The debt ceiling is looming. It looms every single year. And what we do is we kick the can down the road. We bump up spending and we don't cut anything back. Well, Republicans are taking a firm line. And that was one of the agreements that Kevin McCarthy promised, is that he would ensure that budget cuts took place before approving the budget. Well, that's what we're doing. But I want you to listen here when we say budget cuts. It's not actually cuts. What Kevin McCarthy is saying is we're not going to improve additional spending. And this is where they've said, oh, well, they're going to cut schools. They're going to cut Social Security. They're cutting veterans benefits. It's not true. In fact, they're not taking a single cent from that. What they're saying is we're keeping it flat. We're not going to spend anymore. And we're not going to give you these balloon increases every single year. And if you want to raise taxes after that, that's your decision as a revenue base, and the administration wants to bring additional revenue in, revenue meaning your hard-earned money through taxes, that's your choice. And they'll go ahead and slap you with it in election year. But what you're not going to do is increase the budget and increase taxes too, because that doesn't make much sense. It's interesting, in this show, you have to balance things. You have to balance between trying to educate people, but also staying somewhat non-robotic and with high energy. But occasionally you need to write some things down and try to articulate a point that people can take and learn from it and practically apply it in the real world. Let's go ahead and watch this video by Jayapal now, and I will actually be in the center of the screen, and we'll talk a little bit about it. And then we're going to go ahead and talk about the debt ceiling and obviously inflation and tax cuts together in just a second.
New poll out, I'm sure you've seen it in just the last 2 days. And what it shows, really interestingly, is that 60% of Americans say Congress should only raise the debt ceiling if it comes with spending cuts at the same time. And that includes 58% of independents. Is your position out of step now, Congresswoman, with the majority of the American people?
So I want you to listen once again. Most politicians don't answer questions, but she can't possibly answer this question is because Joe Biden's economy absolutely blows. We know this. We understand where inflation's at. We know that we're on a housing bubble. We understand the stock market is overinflated and it will depreciate over time because overall, the dollar is not strong and people's confidence in the dollar is not strong. And that's ultimately what decides if the economy is going to sustain or not. We are in a recession. We are on the precipice of something worse if it does not get fixed. And they certainly can't talk about that. So the debt ceiling doesn't necessarily make people feel warm and fuzzy. Spend more money that we don't have. I think what they're trying to say is that they embrace what Republicans want to do, which is not cut spending, not go ahead and shave anything off. They simply just want to not raise it, as I stated earlier, but also are going to allow them to hang themselves by raising revenue. Nobody wants to pay more taxes, but if you think that this is going to be popular in 2024, you're mistaken. People will go into next April. That is going to be 6 months away from the election. And that is doom and gloom for Joe Biden because people will remember that they're going to get slapped with more taxes. Let's listen to her answer, which is really a non-answer.
I'm so glad you raised that poll because I think it's really important to look at what that poll says. If you just say to people, should we...
Now, yes, she has a lazy eye, and I'm not trying to pick on her looks, but I want you to see this. When CNN pushes back, her blood pressure increases and her eye actually no longer closes, and both of them are equal. It's a sign that she does. When she gets upset, her eyes normalize. So you always just want to watch her closely, and whenever you want to find out if she's lying or not, it's usually her blood pressure is going up, and it's a defense mechanism. So I want you to watch the stabilization once she pushes back the CNN anchor to her answer here.
Spending, they will probably say yes. However, if you say, would you rather cut spending and reduce the deficit by cutting the tax breaks to the wealthiest corporations and wealthiest individuals, or would you like to cut your own health care, education, care for veterans, etc.
Right. So lie to them and also say, listen, I have a choice here. You can go ahead and cut your heart out with a spoon in front of me, or I can give you an ice cream cone and give you a CD and Walkman to reminisce of the days of Def Leppard and Poison. What would you like to do? I think we know option B is going to be the choice for most of America, unless you just hate Poison and Def Leppard and big hair bands. Watch, first of all, great face she's got going on here. Watch the pushback and watch her eye. I'm serious. It's kind of funny.
I guarantee you that you would have even higher numbers that say, let's make sure that we're making the wealthy pay their fair share.
That's not
and
what
that's the other thing we've been saying to the Republicans.
The poll says. This is the exact question that was asked of voters.
Look at that
what should Congress do on the debt ceiling?
It's like a magic trick.
Raise only if spending cut, 60%. Raise no matter what, 24%.
I mean, it's still there, but it's less noticeable, isn't it? Listen, raise only if spending cut, right? 60%. Raise no matter what, 24. And not raise at all, let us default. We always have the anarchists in the audience. Those aren't libertarians. Those are the people who are just like, screw it, let the government burn. That number's gone up. It used to be like 7 or 8% when I was a kid. And then it moved up to about 12 when I joined the military. Now it's up to 15. There are more and more people here who are just like, let the government burn. But watch Lazy Eye here and watch how she goes into deflects yet again.
Not raise, let U.S. default, 15%. These are what they are saying to this critical question. Go ahead.
No, I understand. But, Poppy, you can't take tax cuts out of spending. Tax cuts for the wealthiest are spending. Don't think that that isn't spending. When under Donald Trump, they added almost $2 trillion to the deficit because they gave tax cuts to the wealthiest.
And we also went ahead and extended unemployment for like 2 years and gave people free money left and right, which was actually pushed through by the Democrats. Can we stop pretending that Donald Trump and Joe Biden are responsible for all of the economy and all of the indecision and indecisiveness that is inside the economy right now? Donald Trump had the economy running on rails for 3.5 years, and then a global pandemic that you guys milked like crazy and went ahead and shut down all of our businesses. It's, once again, great face. You cannot pause her in any way, shape, or form without getting something close to the Joker and look like she got hit by a frying pan. Remember those cartoons where some of the cartoon characters are going to flatten face by the frying pan? But they didn't have lazy eyes when that happened. They usually fell out of their head, which is close here.
That is spending. And I think the American people understand that that's what needs to change is we need to roll back those tax cuts and we need to actually make sure that we are reducing the deficit by making the wealthiest pay their fair share, not by cutting working people's benefits.
Very well aware of what those 2017 tax cuts did. And to your point, you pointed out yesterday the policies proposed by the White House and all.
Yeah, those 2017 tax cuts that took 24 independent brackets of taxes and made sure everyone paid less than the previous 4 years in administration. Oh, the horror. Actually, the tax cuts did a great thing if you would actually look at the numbers, but you won't, and you won't be unbiased. You'll do what you always do, which is pontificate and just make everything worse because nothing that Republicans can do is ever going to be good enough. Nothing that Trump can do will ever be good enough. Did you listen to what she had to say if you could get past all the eye stuff and the face stuff? Is that she said, well, in order to decrease the deficit, we need to tax people more. So we need to spend more and raise taxes, take more money from you, spend more in order to decrease the deficit. That has to be the dumbest thing I have heard in at least 15 or 20 minutes. And I've been spending most of my time on Facebook and Twitter this morning. Folks, it comes down to this. Here comes more of detail about what this means. Tax cuts can play a significant role in promoting economic growth. And even though she says it doesn't, it does. And it should always be considered an important tool for fostering a healthy economy. Stimulating economic growth is not necessarily easy, but it starts with tax cuts because it can boost economic activity by putting more money in the hands of individuals and businesses and not in the government. When people have more disposable income, they tend to spend and invest more, which creates demand for goods and services, leading to increased production and job creation. By encouraging consumer spending and business expansion, tax cuts can stimulate overall economic growth. Encouraging investment and entrepreneurship is also important, and lowering tax rates can incentivize investment and entrepreneurship. When individuals and businesses retain more of their earnings, they have greater resources available to invest in new ventures, expand existing businesses, and innovate. This, in turn, leads to increased productivity, technological advancements, and job opportunities, benefiting the economy as a whole. Promoting competitiveness and attracting investment. You lower taxes, and it can enhance a country's competitiveness on the global stage as well. When tax rates are high, businesses may choose to relocate or invest in other countries with more favorable tax environments. Ireland, Apple. By reducing tax burdens, a country can attract foreign direct investment, stimulate domestic investment, and encourage businesses to stay and grow within its borders, like Donald Trump did. Even though Obama said we could never bring these American businesses back, well, he ate crow. Well, at least should have. Now let's address the relationship between government spending, inflation, and the importance of a balanced budget, something that no president has done in the last 75 years. Inflation and government spending is excessive government spending, and it can contribute to inflationary pressures, as we've seen with Joe Biden. When the government spends beyond its means, it often resorts to borrowing or printing money, which increases the money supply. When there is too much money chasing a limited supply of goods and services, as we saw in COVID, prices tend to rise, leading to inflation. This is how, yes, Joe Biden overall impacts gas prices, even though everyone said it wasn't on the way up, but gave him credit for it on the way down. By controlling government spending, we can help mitigate inflationary risk. The importance of a balanced budget is critically important to a self-sustaining government. It means that government spending matches its revenue, resulting in no deficit or surplus. Maintaining a balanced budget is crucial for long-term fiscal stability and fiduciary responsibility. When governments consistently spend more than they earn, they accumulate debt, which can have severe consequences, such as higher interest payments, reduced investment, and increased borrowing costs. A balanced budget ensures that government finances are sustainable and prevents the burden of excessive debt. And it really stops it from falling on future generations as well, even though every tax-paying American now owes $248,000 to the U.S. government. Every tax-paying American, because It's 96,000 per 332 some odd million Americans because not all of them pay taxes. Some are children who can't work, some are elderly who are retired, and some are disabled. And then the rest are pretty much lazy, sucking off the tit of the United States government. But that's another conversation. Cutting the budget and not raising it is important. And this is what Republicans are touting, because cutting the budget implies a reduction in government spending or limiting its growth rate. This approach is essential to prevent unchecked expansion of government programs, which can lead to inefficiencies and waste and misallocation of resources. Let's look at the VA. It's going to be worth $500 billion by 2030. It is on pace to be one of the most bloated organizations in the United States. And if we continue to increase its budget 13% annually, there's no end in sight. But the soldiers and the veterans coming home is not increasing. In fact, it's expecting a 3% increase over the next generation, which is not enough to justify the budget it's asking for. By exercising fiscal discipline, like with the VA, and carefully evaluating expenditure, we can ensure that the government operates within its means and focuses on essential services and investments that provide maximum value for society. Now, the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution, it was ratified in 1868, and it's a crucial amendment that addresses several important issues pertaining to civil rights and equal protection under the law. Interesting, that has nothing to do with abortion and nothing to do with rights to privacy or murder or raising the debt ceiling or going after U.S. presidents for no reason. But it's very important and what the amendment entails and not entails, and we're going to talk about that now. Equal protection. The 14th Amendment ensures that all citizens are entitled to equal protection of the laws. It prohibits states from denying any person within their jurisdiction the equal protection of the law, meaning that individuals must be treated equally under the law, regardless of their race, ethnicity, gender, religion, or other protected characteristics. This is why the 14th Amendment is closely associated with the abolishment of slavery and abolition. It's 3 times I've tried to record that segment, and it's just kicking my ass. Due process. The amendment establishes that states cannot deprive any person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. This means that individuals have the right to fair treatment and legal procedures when facing potential deprivation of their fundamental rights. Citizenship. The 14th Amendment defines citizenship in the United States. It states that anyone born or naturalized in the United States is a citizen, including formerly enslaved individuals who were emancipated after the Civil War. It provides constitutional protection for the rights and privileges of all citizens. The amendment protects the privileges and immunities of citizens against state infringement. It prevents states from treating citizens of other states differently or denying them essential rights and protections. What the 14th Amendment does not do: address voting rights. While the 14th Amendment played a significant role in establishing equal protection under the law, it does not explicitly address voting rights. Subsequent amendments, such as the 15th Amendment and the 19th Amendment, specifically tackle voting rights and address issues of suffrage. Number 2, eliminate discrimination in the private sector. The amendment primarily focuses on government actions and does not directly regulate private discrimination. It restricts discriminatory practices by state and local governments, but it does not impose the same limitations on private individuals or businesses. Number 3, resolve all issues of inequality. While nothing will ever do that, the 14th Amendment is a crucial safeguard for civil rights. It did not eradicate all forms of inequality. It has been interpreted and applied over time by courts and additional legislation, and judicial decisions have been necessary to address specific issues related to equality, such as desegregation, affirmative action, and LGBTQ+ rights. It's important to note that the interpretation and application of the 14th Amendment have evolved through judicial decisions over the years, shaping its impact on civil rights and equality in the United States. It has nothing to do with the President of the United States and if he said some things that hurt people's feelings. It has nothing to do with abortion and murder and deciding that your reproductive health means ripping a baby out of your body. And it has nothing to do with raising the debt ceiling. It's about rights and individual rights. As a wise man once said, you cannot tax a nation into prosperity. And I will tell you this, it doesn't stop them from trying. From the kings to the warlords to the president and to the prime ministers of the world, taxing the peons and the peasants always seems to be the prerogative of the royalty, and always something that we have to suffer. In this case, the Democrats do it better than most. Folks, do me a favor. Share, like, and subscribe. I appreciate you giving me a little bit of time to get the set situated, get the show rebuilt. Thank you for that. I will be on tonight at 8 o'clock with Amy Leroy and myself, and we will be live. We'll be taking your questions and talking about some of the things going on. Target, the Ukraine and Russia, a few other things. So stop on by, come see us live at The Dumb Show across all social media. If you would do me one last favor, stop by thedumbshow.com. You can pick up a cool Dumb Nation shirt, and you can be a follower too by going to @TheDumbShow and giving us a like, share, and subscribe. See ya tomorrow.
I'm David Boreanaz with the Cast the SEAL team, and we have an important message for returning vets.
We want you to know if you're struggling to cope, there's help and it's just a phone call away.
The Veterans Crisis Line is staffed with experienced professionals who know your struggles.
There's no greater sacrifice in service to our country. We're able to enjoy our freedoms because of it.
Your service is important. You are important.
For vets and their families, the Veterans Crisis Line is here to help 24 hours a day. Please call